Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And if you're wanting to learn how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Denis Gianoutsos. He's prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos.
Hey, Peter, welcome to today's show. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. I really am glad that we've made this happen. You way over the other side of my circle, and clearly I'm out of your bubble on the other side of the world. And by the magic of Zoom, we've managed to do this. So I'm intrigued to see how this kind of unfolds tonight for me, in the morning for you.
And you are in Croatia right now,
That's
right?
right. Yeah. So I'm in Split on the south coast of Croatia. You might hear my accent. You hear my accent. It's not Croatian. I am British. I'm from London, but lived in Croatia for about just over 20 years now. This is now my home. But I am actually a Brit.
And what made you go to Croatia?
It's a long story, but to squeeze it all together, I was at art college, art school, and then once I graduated, I just wanted to travel. So I then went to, again, a long story cut short, went to 6 countries. In those countries, there was France. I lived in Paris. I lived in the south of France, Mallorca, Madeira on the Portuguese island in the middle of nowhere, literally, Budapest, lots of other countries, 6 countries. And then I made my way to Croatia, working for a British tour operator. That is where I met a young lady. At the time, she was young. I'm not young anymore. She's not young anymore. I divorced that young lady, actually, had 2 kids with that young lady while I was married, not divorced, obviously, and made Croatia my home. So years went by, and now this is really where I've settled with my company, with my business. And unfortunately, the work I do, I get to travel a lot, but always come back home here to the Croatian coast.
And it's been an interesting time over the last 2 years whereby travel hasn't really been around for some of us. And for some of us, we've still been able to travel limited as well. Do you miss it?
I did miss it. Fortunately, over the last 6 months, things here on this side of the world, things are opening up quite well, especially in the Middle East. I was in Dubai a week and a half ago, and you wouldn't even think there was a pandemic happened at all.
Right.
So I did miss it, definitely. But then you adapt and you have to try out other things. You have to keep those of us who have businesses, those of us who have to take care of ourselves, our families, but also people that work for us as well. We have to think of those and look for ways to adjust, to adapt and survive. So that's what I did, looking at really how I can coach people to do this. When I say this, I mean speaking on Zoom, speaking through virtual exchanges, really helping people to get comfortable at this, creating the connection, creating this chemistry, using all those techniques that we use in person in terms of public speaking and getting our messages across. But here, the skill set's slightly different. So helping people to retrain and do that really well, because as we know, it certainly wasn't at the beginning. And for many, it's still tough now, really, to get that connection, that credibility, that trust through that camera screen, and try to build up relationships that are not in person, but virtually.
Yeah, it's interesting because I find this whole area fascinating, and I've been really looking forward to this interview. In relation to what? In relation to the speaking side of things, when I work with a lot of executives and leaders, we're talking about how do they connect with the audience? How do they communicate in a way that's really going to get the message across that most people are going to go, I get it. And I think for sometimes a lot of people, Peter, they just get up there and they talk, they communicate, they're talking head up front. And I'm just really excited about having you here. We're going to go through some questions about leadership and about what leaders are doing and so forth. Now, how did you get into this? How did you get into leadership? How did you get into working with leaders?
As a speaker coach, a lot of my work at the beginning was actually just simple soft skills communications, right? So I opened my company here in Croatia. A lot of the companies were local, and then it moved more towards the speaking side. How do things you say, how you say them, and the impact that you have when you share those messages, and the perception, people's perception of you, the perception of yourself when you're sharing your messages. So all these things come into play, and really a lot of it is actually the kind of, it's not a mind game, but it's to do with how you feel about certain things. That's going to help you kind of share and leak out those messages in a better way. So during those soft skill years, I call them, that gave me a lot of opportunity to work with leaders, work with management teams, sales teams, and then moving on to CEOs. And so the idea of a CEO coming to me for help when they needed to speak at a conference, or they're on a panel discussion, or simply they just feel they need to polish up the way they're sharing their messages in a more stronger way, that kind of became a reality, because the leaders that I've worked with, and I'm sure it's the same for you as well, for many people that are listening, in terms of the competencies of a leader, most have them. Most have those competencies, right? Because that's how they got to where they are. Unless they got there another way, but we won't talk about that. But the thing is, in terms of communicating, this is a skill, whether you're a leader, whether you're middle management, whether you just started your first day on your job, or whether you're a teenager who's just coming out of school. Communicating is such an important skill that is all about connection, right? It's all about connection. So if we think of, let's say, a leader or leadership, and we think of words connected with leadership communication, right? We probably think of being bold, strong, courage, setting the tone, a follower. People have to follow you. But when it certainly comes to this environment where we have to, in front of a screen, in front of a camera, it's all about connection. Connection is the number one thing. So it's all about switching, helping leaders to okay, those words are applicable, but really here, the number one and the first thing you need to do is really think, okay, how can I connect? How can I connect better? And it's all of those things: empathy, being transparent and clear, giving people space to think, letting people feel comfortable. Because at the end of the day, it's all about, if you're good at this, you're somebody who makes people feel comfortable looking at you and listening to you and being with you. So that's how I got into it. And this is really where we are now, helping leaders to do exactly that. Really make people feel, making people feel comfortable and ready and receptive for kind of a connection. And once you've got that, then it's so much easier to lead even better, isn't it? It's so much easier for people to listen to you more. And it's so much easier to share messages, even if those messages are not exactly what people want to hear, right? If the negative side, if you can connect better from the beginning, you're setting yourself up for more success as a leader.
Yeah. Now, Peter, I was talking to the chairman of a board yesterday in relation to what you've just been saying. I wasn't talking to him about what you're saying, of course, but he brought up a topic yesterday that he was on a Zoom call in a meeting. And then once he finished it, his wife happened to be walking past the room that he was in the house. And she said to him, "Why are you getting so angry?" And he was like, "What?" She said, "Your voice was really loud at times and you were you're really frustrated. What was going on?" And he didn't realize that he was doing that. And he knew he was frustrated, but didn't realize the tone of his voice or the volume of his voice was going up. When we're on Zoom meetings and things like that, being on stage live, sometimes we need to be animated depending on the stage. And I don't mean to be out there being like a crazy person, but bigger sort of things, because we look smaller on the stage. On a Zoom call and things like that, do we need to be animated? What should we do there?
Okay, so here's the thing. So again, if it's in person and we're on a stage, lots of people are looking at us. They're not maybe right in front of us, they're further away. So this thing about using your energy and using your space equals confidence, right? So the more space we take up, usually if we're more people that are more confident, in many ways are using more space with their body, more space with their gestures, even more space between the fingers to show that they're actually more confident. It's a strange thing, but people who are confident, you never usually see politicians walking along with fingers that I'm showing you right now you can see this. People that listen to this can't see this at all, but simply I've got my hands out and my fingers are like next to each other, closed, without a space between those fingers. Usually when politicians we can see it on the TV all the time, you can see that there's spaces between the fingers, almost as if we're grabbing something. And that is something, as I say, space shows us that we're confident and that we're in control of the situation, right? Here on this crazy world we call Zoom, we don't have naturally as many cues or as much data to go by to absorb what's happening, right? So if you think of it like this, we have to amplify all our signals to make sure whoever's listening and looking at us, they are very clear about what's happening, right? So right now, okay, listeners can't see this, but Dennis, you can. So you can see me and I'm standing up, right? It's not by accident I'm standing up. I stand up all the time for these kind of exchanges because it makes me feel stronger. It makes me feel more confident. And it also, the breath coming in gives a better quality of my voice, right? So that's the first thing, right? Also, you can see my gestures. So I'm making sure that you see my hands, right? So again, those people can't see this, so I'll just explain what's happening. Literally, I'm standing out and just below my chin, between my chin and the bottom frame, which is like the top half of my chest, up to my chin. This area here, this is where I'm showing what my hands are doing. I'm just making sure that Dennis can see my hands. Some of those gestures are like illustrative gestures where I'm illustrating something. Some of those are like baton gestures, like I'm saying something more when I'm putting it down. Some of them are just rhythmic gestures, right? But you seeing my fingers, you seeing my hands, or an indication of what they're doing, this for you gives you this impression that you're slightly closer to me, or you slightly are more intrigued and curious as to what I'm saying. Also, certain things that I say, with obviously the tone that I'm saying them in and the intonation, together with a gesture, you're more likely to remember that, or remember that phrase or that moment when it's coupled with a gesture, right? So essentially, okay, a lot of gesture talk there, but essentially it's about being animated and making sure that what you share intrigues the brain of the person looking at you.
Heather, a massive welcome to you.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
It's great to have another podcast on the show with me as well. I think it's really cool. I tend to have a lot of leaders around the world in various aspects of business, but having another podcaster is always a pleasure to have them with me because they understand this whole thing, how it works, which is pretty cool. I understand that you have another podcast. Tell us a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, so my business is all about, as you said, podcast advertising. And gosh, it's been a few years now. I started the podcast advertising playbook. And on that show, I talk nothing except for just about podcast advertising, which was super fun for those of us in the industry to listen and geek out on. But it's been a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, good. And whereabouts in the world are you today?
So I am in Sarasota, Florida.
Florida, nice. So you're in spring now, right? You're going into that nice period of time and yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I moved to Florida about a year ago, so I'm relatively new to it. But yes, it is definitely spring and we haven't got hot and humid yet. We're just in this lovely kind of 75 to 80 degree days. So I'm enjoying it for sure.
Awesome. And when Heather is not doing podcasting or the advertising side of things, what do you tend to do, like interests and hobbies outside of that?
I love to walk. So for my 40th birthday, I walked 40 miles and I could just walk all day. I listen to, of course, podcasts and lots of audiobooks, but that's one of my favorite things to do.
Awesome. 40 miles. And wow, that would have been really good.
Yeah, it was fun.
Did the family and friends go with you? Or was it just you?
Yeah, no, it was great. So I invited my friends to come along. And so I had different friends that joined me for different portions. I had one friend that did the whole thing with me, which was really neat, but it was a fun milestone.
Excellent. We're talking about leadership is changing here. How did you get into leadership?
So I got into leadership as an entrepreneur. I started my career actually in retail sales, and I was a retail store manager for a little while when I was really young. And then I got into ad sales, and I did that for many years. But gosh, I was doing the math before I got on the show with you, and I've been a business owner now for 17 years. And as a business owner, I think you're in a really unique position because most business owners don't know a ton about leadership. And it certainly has taken me many years and reading lots of books and going to different courses and seminars and listening to podcasts and working with coaches to help improve my leadership skills. But I really feel that being in an entrepreneurial role and having a team is what has allowed me to scale up and step up my leadership skills.
Yeah, it's quite interesting how a lot of us being entrepreneurs, we are the person, right? It's us at first, unless you buy another business which has already got people. But we tend to be just us. And then next time we're having to try and lead ourselves. And then we're having to then bring a team on board and start to think about other people as well. And that whole transition is really interesting. How did you find the transition between, say, yourself and if you brought others on board? How was that transition for you?
Originally, I had business partners. So in my
Hmm.
first venture, I had business partners, and I've always gravitated to the natural leadership role. So even in that company, I was the CEO of that organization and I managed all of our staff. And I made some really bad mistakes when I first started. I think back on some of the things I did and I was like, gosh, what was I thinking? So it definitely was a rocky start for sure. And I also have found that there is a big difference between leading a person or having an independent contractor and then having an employee, and having one employee is very different than having five employees or 10 employees. So there are different levels, I think, of growth that's appropriate as you grow with a team. And really, it's about figuring out how you can structure what each of those people are doing. And then I think most importantly and most difficult is what exactly is your role as a leader when you are in the business of doing. Of course, there's the famous E Myth book, which all entrepreneurs should read if they haven't. And I know most have. But when you're doing your business, it's very easy. I can tell you, I could talk to you all day long about how to sell advertising, right? That's what I knew how to do. But knowing how to become a leader and even just knowing what are your tasks as a leader on a day-to-day basis, there's a big transition that happens there. So you can stop doing and start leading.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. And what exactly is your role as a leader? That's a very good question to actually ask yourselves, depending whatever you're doing. What is your role? And what are you responsible for? And what are others responsible for too? Because if you know what your swim lane is, as we call it a lot of times, and understand what you're doing, then you can actually do things and make sure that you're staying in that lane and not crossing to other areas or then crossing to your area too. Because I think here, a lot of times what happens is that becomes very confusing for people. And it's really important for us to be clear on who's doing what. Now, a lot of people, whether they're being entrepreneurs and large corporates, whatever, that we get influenced by various leaders in our lives. And now this person could be alive or from history. Who is your favorite leader and why?
Sarah Blakely is my favorite leader. So Sarah Blakely is the founder of Spanx, which are the shapewear, the original shapewear for women. And the reason that I really like Sarah is because she has been a very authentic leader. So first she founded a huge, very profitable organization and she started it out of her house. And so she started with very humble beginnings. And then she was able to build her company up to the point where in October of 2021, she sold the majority share of her organization. And I think it was like 1.2 billion is what she sold it for, which is obviously a huge amount. But part of what I really respect about her is her authenticity, and just even watching her on her Instagram page with like her four kids. Her kids will often look like she hasn't bathed them or groomed them in months and years. And here she is, like super successful, and she's just really willing to be honest. The other thing that I just really respect about her is her ability to, nurture her staff and the people that helped her get where she is. So when she sold the company, she gave her employees each $10,000 and two plane tickets, round trip plane tickets to anywhere in the world. And I just thought that was such a neat testament to her desire to help give back to people who had really helped make her who she was. And so for those really reasons, I really admire her.
Awesome. Really good. And if you were to sit on a park bench with Sarah, having a cup of coffee together, what would be one question you would ask her?
So I would ask her if she felt like there was a turning point between when her business was small and when she was able to scale it. To be transparent, while my business currently is very successful and doing more than most female entrepreneur businesses do in terms of revenue, I'm very proud of that. I still feel that there is a big gap between smaller, kind of more mom and pop businesses to larger corporations, and making that transition is really difficult. Like we were talking about going from just one employee to several employees, or as you grow, there are different challenges that you face. And I would love to talk to her about how she was able to navigate that.
Great. Now, congratulations to you on what you're talking about, your revenue and going really well on that. What drives you in your business?
It drives me to be constantly learning and growing. I really believe that I'm not the type of person who wants to sit still. I always want to be pushing myself to do something that's just outside of my comfort zone, and to really give myself that challenge to see where I can go. And I know that I can accomplish a lot, but oftentimes I had a coach tell me once that I needed to dream a bigger dream. And that's something that I always think about. And for a long time, I had that poster on my wall, like dream a bigger dream. So what is it? Oftentimes we play small, especially I think as a female founder, it's easy to feel like we're limited. Maybe we have responsibilities to take care of our children or our household, and we feel limited in our capacity to grow. So really just trying to push myself beyond what I think I can accomplish.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that you say that, because I find that I've coached a lot of female leaders around the world, and there seems to be that common theme sometimes coming through around them actually dreaming bigger, or actually thinking bigger, or actually going out and doing things, because when they do it way better than anyone else. And it's really amazing to see it. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. And I just find that I just wish they would do more like that. And I think a lot of it is to actually encourage them to do it. But I also find it's actually quite interesting how that same kind of mindset or that same kind of thing happens for people, whether them being male or female, living in a smaller country than others. And they talk about that, and I hear men and women in New Zealand, as an example, talking about, oh, little old me and little old New Zealand. I'm like, no, that thinking needs to change, because when Kiwis go out there into the global stage, we punch above our weight. We do really well. And I think that it's about a mindset about how we think possibly differently to then actually go out there and do things. And I think that's really cool what you've shared there, because, yeah, I mean, dream a bigger dream. I think that's awesome.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.